are like massive, fat, thick colas that you could have full of seeds that will outperform traditional grain strains. Now, there's some pros and cons to this, right? Because you have cannabinoids in there. There is a THC, could be a THC issue, right? And let's face it, THC is like a stress hormone. So the more stressed out she becomes, the more THC she's going to produce. That could come from below the ground, it can come from above the ground, or it can come from pollination, right?
Hey guys, it's Mandy with Global Hemp Association. I wanted to say thank you so much for joining. I'm excited about the opportunity to build a relationship and connect this supply chain. I mean, after all, that's why we started the association. Our association was built on the foundation of connecting supply chain, building relationships, and helping you grow your business. Anyone from farmers, manufacturers, and distributors, people that are passionate about the supply chain, and those creating products selling into biofuels, plastics, textiles, construction, and building materials.
Well, thank you so much for joining. Do you mind real quick, given a background, how did you get into this? Tell me a little bit about your company, where you're at right now. We'll just dive right in because I've got a lot of questions.
Yeah, sure. So I'm President CEO of Botanic Wellness Limited, an Australian IPO company. Keep your fingers crossed, everybody. We should be live on the Australian Stock Exchange at the end of this month or the beginning of next month. It's been a long road as far as that's concerned, as maybe a lot of you are aware. You're aware that Australia's they had an eradication policy when it came to COVID. So Melbourne, Australia, which is in the state of Victoria, has experienced over 250 days of lockdown. Very similar lockdown to what we experienced in March of 2020, only they did 250 days. And the governments are just finally starting to release a little bit of control, making it a little bit easier for us to list. That being said, we have operations in Australia. We're licensed to grow 2,500 acres of hemp in Australia, New South Wales. This last year, we grew a little over 100 acres, quite the successful grow. It was awesome. Nice to know that a Northern Hemisphere plant can also grow in the Southern Hemisphere. So that was really cool. And then in the United States, we have operations in Arizona, Colorado, Missouri, Texas, Oklahoma, and if I didn't say Minnesota.
Okay.
Next year, we will be in Nebraska as well. I'm currently in Houston, Texas, in the Galleria area. Love it to bits. People here are flipping amazing, and we look to expand here in Texas. We don't sell a lot of our stuff here in the United States. We found that global distribution was a simpler way of doing it. As you're probably all aware, competition here in the United States is pretty tough. So we chose to go a different route and export our goods. If you have our retail products, it's either we gave it to you or somehow you found it on the internet. Anyways, so yeah, that's being an international company. It makes it easier for us to distribute internationally, and I'm sure we'll cover a lot more as we go along.
Okay, so I'm curious then, how's the journey been as an international company? Talk to me a little bit about what that looks like for those that don't understand or somebody that's interested in entering the international trade.
So first off, you got to get to know time zones. Second of all, you got to fall in love with coffee. Lots and lots of coffee. So to gain perspective, I start my day in Arizona, Pacific Standard Time right now at, let's say 8 a.m. as normal. And then I have a second part of my day that begins at 3 p.m., which is 8 a.m. Melbourne, Australia time. Uh-huh. And then dealing with our UK, because we do have operations in the UK, we sponsored a footy league, soccer for the rest of us, which was really cool. And in order for us to be on those phone calls, I was up at 3 a.m. in preparation for those phone calls. So you really got to get to know international time zones. Second thing is really cool to get to know customs. My Australian counterparts, they're amazing. They got a beautiful accent. And sometimes because their accents are so fun, I just love listening to them talk. I don't always pick up on social cues that they're actually upset. And so I'm laughing and joking. They're like, "This is no laughing matter, sir." And I'm like, so it's kind of an interesting thing. And that goes anywhere, right? So Japan, Southeast Asia, UK, EU, all the same. So you don't have to be an expert.
I think even from the East Coast to the West Coast, I mean, there's personality difference that you just gotta be able to
Agreed.
pull on, right? Let
Yeah,
alone
but
culture. And
yeah, agreed. So if you just take that same thing and just apply it across the planet, it's pretty good. I think timing or your schedule is probably the most difficult part of it all. And then being willing to dive into their legal regulations. So the famous saying is that Australia is about 3 to 5 years technology wise. They're right up with us in about 3 to 5 years with regulations and culture. So the CBD in Australia is still regulated like fentanyl, heroin, and or cannabis, THC. And because the devil's cabbage, that's how they regulate the fiber side of things and the grain side of things. And so you have to have very similar licenses. So you just have to be willing to invest a little bit more time, in some cases, a little bit more money into navigating that. And because they're so new, they're like, you tell us what we should do. So we did the same thing in the UK in the beginning. Now they're putting their big boy pants on, and they're adulting really well in this industry. And same thing in the EU. Though there are certain areas like Poland, it's kind of like the Wild West, and France has kind of got their stuff together. So just be willing to be patient. Don't rush your sale or your order or your relationship. It's going to take you probably an extra 60 days. Then I don't know. I just made that up, but an extra month or two to actually get to actually have the relationship blossom. Make sure that all your regulations are in order. And I find them to have a little bit more of a premium than what we get here in the United States, and that includes fiber, grain, or your medicine if you're dealing in medicine. And all of that comes as a reward, in my opinion, for navigating the regulations.
okay, so you call yourself a strategy or have been claimed to be a strategy expert, right? Talk to me about what this looks like, because it's something that's not that we don't talk about a lot in the industry, or there's a lot of people getting into it that just don't consider the long-term strategy. And then there's those that are like, we're getting into real business, we're going to move this forward. Talk to me a little bit about what you've seen within this industry specifically compared to past experience or other industries you've worked in.
Okay. So you're gonna have me prove that I am a strategy expert. So okay. So what we do inside of my company, I have a great team. We run a very lean team. There's only 7 of us in the United States. So I have Jason, my farm management team, and then I have Amaya Mayat, who is my COO, who has a background in BI or business intelligence, and then all the way through. We're all entrepreneurs working for the same cause. So if you're familiar with entrepreneurs versus intrapreneurs, so it's an entrepreneur who is working inside of a company, and that has been a really cool dynamic. So the reason why I bring that up is because we break everything on paper first. So we look at everything through the different disciplines that everybody brings to the table, and we break it on paper first. We look at what the United States is doing, and then we can anticipate what the globe is doing, and then make adjustments. The key is weeding out the bad actors. So unfortunately, inside of our industry, we have had a lot of bad actors. I call them BSers and liars, and I have other words that I probably shouldn't use on a podcast that I would use right straight to their face. And unfortunately, that has cost our industry a lot of money, a lot of credibility, and it's causing us in my opinion, a lot of issues regarding even down to banking, loans, banking, merchant services, and so on. Breaking things on paper first allows you to see where your shortcomings are and allows you to shore them up before they become a problem. So if you're engaged in, let's just pick on the lowest hanging fruit, a banking institution that you had a bank account with, you can foresee that, look, my tenure with this bank may be short-lived. So it's wise to have a couple of bank accounts in the wings. So therefore, if something does happen, it's business as usual. There was a point in time in 2017 and 2018, 2019, where we had bank accounts. They discovered we were hemp, and they just canceled us. There was 9 bank accounts, 9 different banking institutions. And it was like I had money in the ether. It went from one cashier's check to another cashier's check to another cashier's check because it didn't take them long to catch on to what we were doing. And it was just enough time for them to hold the money for 2 weeks, because that's what happened. You make large deposits, then cancel it. And then we had to get cashier's checks. So it was a rough deal. So what we find is that having multiple bank accounts, just as a strategy, will help you. Multiple merchant accounts, and multiple attorneys. It really does help. It really does help. One of the things that I found, it seems to me like people are afraid of utilizing attorneys in fear of having to have a bill. I just have an agreement with my attorneys that, if you're going to charge me for responding to an email, we're not going to be in a relationship. If it requires you to respond in a dissertation, I totally get it. But if you're just like, yep, meet you at noon and you're charging me for that, it's not happening. And when you develop a relationship with attorneys that way, it makes it easier for you to communicate with them and keeps you out of trouble. The last thing that I'll say about that as well is that they have to be entrepreneurial. They can't just be an institutional attorney. So they have to actually know what it's like to be an entrepreneur, and you give them the what and they give you the how. And that's the best relationship with attorneys as well. So I don't want to create this picture like I talk to them every day or every week or every month for that matter, unless they're my friends. I typically check in with an attorney, that few attorneys we have on retainer, once a quarter, if that. So it's not that expensive, and $1,000 here and there is well worth the investment. So hopefully that answers your question.
There's a lot of conversations we have about the importance of building the team, and not just your immediate board or your advisors, but it also anybody else that you're outsourcing or you're bringing in, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So on that, and I apologize. So on that, we don't hire anyone. We curate everybody. So I would assert, curate your clothing, right? So you have a certain color palette, you know what fits you, and you're investing time, effort, and energy in finding out what outfit is going to be the cutest or match your body type or match your skin tone. And if you're not doing that, you may want to do that. So yeah, I can get away with wearing purple. So I think this is purple. Please be purple. So the same way, and the way that many museums curate artwork, right? So, where the Mona Lisa sits is where she's going to be. That's it, period. No, hands down, not moving, right? That's just how things are. So we actually look at or observe our coworkers, our team members, the exact same way. Same thing goes with our board members, and same thing goes with something just like we talked about was our attorneys. We develop a culture, and like I mentioned before, that is entrepreneurial in spirit. So they're entrepreneurs willing to work for an entrepreneur. And so that is a quality we look for. We built an amazing foundation document and a culture document that is more or less like our first filter. If you're not willing to participate in our culture this way, because we're up to big stuff and we're going to need to move fast. This industry, it's rough. It's rough and tough. And what's real today is a lie in 30 days. So you have to be dynamic, and you have to be able to pick yourself up, because you may have been invested those 30 days as like, this is as real as it's going to get, as real as my next breath, and it doesn't go through. So that requires something, and doesn't mean you have to do it on your own. We're a team, but we do curate everybody. And then the second thing is that we also have, we've created, I don't say because I didn't do this alone. Anybody who says they did alone is just full of crap.
Yeah.
And so my whole team is vested. There's many times I have my farmer. I don't know what state he's in half the time. I don't know what state he's in now. I just don't. But what I do know is that he produces results and he gets the job done. And he only contacts me when there's an issue. So if my phone rings, I answer. He doesn't call just to shoot the crap or, whatever. So the end of my banter on this is that if we all curated our relationships that way, it would allow us to keep our industry free of, or at least mitigate, the bad actors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've said for a while, collaboration, also the communication, communication between people. What are you doing? What's working? Who are you working with? And it doesn't have to be specific, but it definitely helps to weed out who to avoid or what to avoid, right? There's a lot of pitfalls we make that we just don't have to make due to accidents.
Agreed. And inside of that conversation of collaboration, there's some ambiguity to the relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So what we have found inside the curating conversation is we set, these are the rules of engagement. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't want to make it sound like we're perfect. That's not it at all. We've got plenty of black eyes. I mean, we lost 486 acres last year of hemp. Unfortunately, there are, we owed people money, right? I mean, it just happens. So I don't want to make it sound like we're perfect, but it was through those mistakes we actually, that we created this. So if we are going to engage in a collaboration, we actually identify what that collaboration is and what you can expect from me at minimum. Yeah. And in this industry, a lot of the bad actors, they bring a lot of noise, a lot of excitement, get you moving. And then when you kind of pin them down inside of what you created as far as a collaboration is concerned, it was more like I bring a lot of noise and excitement and you're supposed to do the work. So that's not technically collaboration, but they make it smell that way.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about how things have changed. For a long time, I've said, the plane is flying. We fixed it. We got on, it was flying, and we started fixing it and moving it, right? Mm-hmm. In a direction. And I do have to give you credit. A lot of where we've come from is being able to move forward through the mistakes and understanding that they're here, and anybody that's not new to an industry, starting a new industry, there's going to be mistakes and it's going to happen. And how do we come together to be the best on the back end or on the front end so that we are taking care of our farmers and taking care of everybody within the supply chain and doing right by all of our contracts, right? And so I commit that it is a level of experience that you brought forward that gets us to where we are. So with that too, talking about experience, you've given quite a few speeches. What have been some of your favorite topics or topics maybe that we should be focusing on that the industry itself isn't focusing on?
So, well, we kind of touched on it. It's relationships. So I have had the blessing of doing over 1,700 keynote speeches, and I've been on dozens and dozens of more of panels and so on. Yeah. And the ones that seem to get the most attention are not the ones that are like a textbook, right? So A plus B all the way to Z, and this is how you do things. Mm-hmm. My engineers are the crowd, or my PhDs are the crowd, are in love with it, and the rest of them are just looking at their phone, waiting for the escape, right? And but the ones that I actually tend to get the most attention are inside of relationship conversations. Mm-hmm. I don't tend to be a relationship guru. I'm not a pickup artist or anything like that. I don't want that to be any part of the conversation. And sometimes I do correlate it back, which I think has the communication happen. So what I mean is that relationships are just conversations, and our net worth is inside of our relationships. And if we look at our relationships and that net worth just isn't there, then it's not that those people are bad or that you shouldn't hang out with them or whatever. You just have to find a different room to play in. Mm-hmm. And that comes down to, so this is where it comes into the relationship comparison. So if you're, as you are, a beautiful woman and you are seeking a man of high value, whatever your definitions of that are, you're probably not going to find this person in the, in a lower economic status part of town at a Starbucks. Okay. You've got to go where that man is or person.
Meet them where they're at.
Exactly. So that could be in some cases, if you're like in what I do is entertaining financial members of the financial community, from investment bankers to brokers to you name it, and everywhere in between. I'm finding them at country clubs or on the doggone golf course. I don't have a handicap. I show up handicap, and I just can't. I can whack it down. That's what I can do. And then I have to ask them, is that a good place? And they're like, sure. And I'm like, cool.
No,
and then
it's not.
No, it's not. They're just being nice.
We're playing scramble. So
right. So, my favorite part is driving the cart. And then I just so happens I have to talk to this person. So you do have to go where they are. And in our industry, it's been difficult because a lot of those that showed up as where you should be were those that kind of got kicked out. Not kind of. It was like they got kicked out of the cannabis industry. So they came from California or Colorado, and not all of them are bad. Please, there's a lot of fantastic players in those states, but those that made the most noise in the beginning, that showed up as like somebody I would want to meet, let's say at a country club for this example. We didn't have anything to reference it to. Right. So it wasn't like we had, a community, their community that we can kind of tap into and say, how is Mandy? What do you know about her? What's going on? What about Don? How is this guy? Right. We just didn't have that. We had individuals that came out and were like, I'm expert in all things that you need to know. And if you put it in the ground and you spray it with this juice, trust me, it's going to be awesome. Yeah. I am oversimplifying an incredibly scary situation that we went through. Right. And the whole industry experienced it. And costs absorbent amount of money poured into just seeds with a hope and a prayer that they would actually germinate and insert all kinds of stuff. We just didn't have that community. So what we did is we decided, okay, fine, there is no standard. So let's play the standard. And if we are the standard, then who do we want in our community? And so that's when we started pulling in from, for instance, Australia. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not from Australia. So, I don't have an Australian accent. So I went, and I didn't. I zoomed through the power of the internet in 2017 and 2018 to Australia. And we pulled these amazing people into our circle, and then the UK, and then the EU. And then that gave us the empowerment to then continue to vet those here in the United States. I met you in Indianapolis. Yeah. We share a couple of mutual colleagues. And through that community, we're able to go, you know what, Mandy's pretty awesome. And that's somebody that I want to talk to. And it just so happens she has a podcast. Maybe we should play in that. But you get what I'm saying. It really does take a community to vet that person. And so that's so inside of the relationship speeches, I should say, actually lays a lot of value inside of generating your community, and more so inside of our industry.
You're speaking my language. And this is exactly what I'm passionate about. Why I wanted to do what I'm doing and put together what I'm doing is because people do business with people they know and like, right? And if we're trying to fix something that's broken, we're going to lean into who we trust. And I really think that's what happened in the industry in general. People leaned into, my brother's farmer's sister down the street that knew everything about cannabis because he had a crop that now, they said that's what I was supposed to use and do. And there was no real, like you said, place to vet or figure out or communicate, and collaborate and say what worked. And not even just the people, but also to, when do you outsource versus hiring in-house? Right. What product, what equipment, what trucking agency do we use to get from Montana to Washington, to Washington? Mm-hmm. Just little things like that I've heard come up, and I've been proud of the conversations that we've been able to, facilitate for that reason, because it's who do we know and who do we trust in the industry, and, access to what they know.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And what was really interesting is as we do a lot of farming. Yeah. And when we talk to the farmers in the beginning, though they grow cotton, they grow corn, somehow this was some anomaly inside of industrial agriculture. Even though it's been around since Christ was a carpenter. Seriously, tens of thousands of years. And so, but somehow in the United States, it has to be done completely different than Canada or Southeast Asia or any other place for that matter, the Netherlands. And somehow, 2,000 plants an acre was somehow supposed to get us over the industrial hemp hurdle here in the United States. And farmers were like, well, I trust this guy because it seems like it's from agriculture, even though we were coming out and saying, listen, we've got to run 8 to 10 pounds in this field if we're going to make it anywhere. And it was real interesting. So those even farmers that know farming, right? They wake up, they eat, sleep, and dream farming. They were even in questionable states as far as how to grow. And we were, and many times in our early relationships, we allowed the farmers to kind of trump the decision, right? It's their land. It's, they know what they're doing. They understand, agriculture and in due to that gap in knowledge, and they're treating it like marijuana, really. created a unique dynamic inside of our industry and created a lot of problems for us. As prices began to fall, we just didn't have the material to keep up or to pivot. Right. So I couldn't take a Christmas tree and turn it into fiber. Right. It doesn't. I mean, arguably we could do something, but truthfully, with the market being so young, it nearly had to be in perfect condition in order for us to do anything. But still to this day, right? And if I was growing for medicine, I was negating my grain production. So I didn't have the seeds, one for future crops and two for food in the future. So I didn't have a fallback or a plan. We didn't have a fallback or a plan beyond that stuff. So with those bruises, leaning on community, like we said, in the beginning, there was just so little data and a lot of bad data, I should say, that had us make those decisions. Now I'm wearing a big boy shirt, and I wear and we've adapted. So now we grow some cases a tri-crop, and in many cases a dual crop, meaning for fiber grain, and medicine. And we've actually we've bared some really good results, I should say. I almost said successful. We're getting there. We've bared some very good results.
Okay, I want to dive into some of that. So remind me when we come back. But I just want to ask now, and then I'll go back to some of the other things that you said. Dual crop and tri-crop. There's a lot of debate on what works and what doesn't, and especially for textile grade or high-end textile grade compared to some of these others. Can you just briefly talk about some of those? Yeah. Like, what is your success? What are you finding? Do you have genetics that you can share? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So this is where the most hate comes in. Those that are watching, you'll see, or afterwards, maybe they're not brave enough to put something in now, but when we're done and this is posted, I promise you the hate will come in on this conversation specifically. So, so here, what I want to say is what I'm about to say is not perfect. Okay. We're not talking about the sniper, or the specialized cannabis plant inside of hemp. Okay. So, but it's a good catch all. So it's like a well-rounded player. This player is probably not going to hit home runs every game, but every now and there's one that's hit out of the park, but you're guaranteed to get on base. Does that make sense? Uh-huh. So, what we have found is that, hemp plants, CBD hemp plants. Let's do that because we're going to kind of play with identifiers here, and they're not technically textbook. But CBD hemp plants, certain strains produce massive, fat, thick colas that you could have full of seeds that will outperform traditional grain strains. Now there's some pros and cons to this, right? Because you have cannabinoids in there. There is a THC. Could be a THC issue, right? Let's face it, THC is like a stress hormone. So the more stressed out she becomes, the more THC she's going to produce. That could come from below the ground, it can come from above the ground, or it can come from pollination, right? We can all agree that men do stress out women. Let's just agree to that. Right? Let's just do that.
I'm glad there's
hey. So with that, just like our adrenal glands respond to stress, just consider inside of this analogy, that's what THC is. So you do have that as a factor. However, what we have found is that most is a bad word. A lot of CBD strains produce very thick colas, which give us an extremely good harvest when it comes to grain. Now, because of the grain involved, or maybe even medicine involved, you are going to compromise other things. So let's say we're doing a tri-crop and I got a really fat cola and this thing is just full of seeds. I'm going to have a diminished rate of return on my medicine content, because as a mama plant, she's going to utilize the sugars to make her babies. Look, daddy left. Daddy did his job and died off, right? So mom's got to take care of her own. It's hey, look, see, relationships. See, I told you. And so she uses all of her money or all of her sugars to support her babies, right? So you're going to have diminishing rate of return on her cannabinoids. So we can argue that if you were growing specifically for cannabinoids, this isn't the thing for you.
Right.
But when you're growing for cannabinoids grain, and then we also have fiber. Fiber, when I say fiber, we're not talking high quality.
Right.
It's old age fiber. So when you and I met in Indianapolis, I think you were like, hey, I need fiber. I'm like, great, I have it. But let's define what fiber is, right? That's the only conversation that you need to have. So my fiber, or my herd, which is the aged sticks, right? For those that may be new to this, has limited application, but for those that has application for, I have money.
Yeah.
For my grain, yes, my grain does diminish my medicine content, but I have a boatload of grain. So I have for my own crops, I have future crops, right? And then I also have, which brings down my cost of farming. And now I can feed the food market or hemp oil market. And I now have it. I'm not just leaning on medicine, or I'm not just leaning on fiber. So if something goes wrong, I have something that at minimum, in our experience, we're able to break even or make a little bit of profit in worst case scenarios. So like I shared with you, 486 acres was gone. It was just terrible. It was in Lubbock, Texas. We had problems with our wells. They went through a drought, and then all of a sudden Mother Nature got really irritated and rained, then snowed, then it iced, then it rained again, and then it snowed, and we just couldn't do anything about it. And we avoided tornadoes. It was really cool. Like the tornadoes came in and then they just kind of like, well, we won't affect this hemp crop. And then it came back down and kept going. And we're like, cool. The universe has got our back. We somehow paid dividends. Great. And then that happened. Look, I'm being facetious, but we also had another 500 plus acres in the ground that because we did grow a dual crop at the time, was enough for us to break even. Now, we didn't make money. Nobody became hemp billionaires. I've never met a hemp billionaire, by the way. Just never have. But we didn't lose our butts, and we were able to take care of our farmers as well. So hopefully that answers the question. It really does. It's definitely not specialty. And if you're looking at individual categories, if somebody is specialized, you're going to beat us. You just are. And at the same time, though, you don't have access to, or those that do grow with a specialty, let's just say medicine, you don't have access to those other markets to benefit from. And the last thing I'll say about that is that because we've chosen to do this, there are growing, we have a mutual friend. She asked me, she said it was okay that I shout out to her, Eloise Fritzkorn, who is she's awesome. She's super amazing. I laughed my tail off with her yesterday. We went to this little cafe called Annie's Cafe. They have these watermelon margaritas that are sinfully delicious, and we just laughed our tails off. It was so much fun. Awesome. Anyways. Yeah, it was awesome. So
I'll go down and visit. Maybe
yeah. I'm here every other week. So if there's something, let's meet up.
Yeah.
But with that, so she's working with a gentleman who has, no joke, has legit machinery on deck to make hemp straws. Hemp plastic straws. And now they're a couple weeks out, dare I say. They're still fine-tuning their formulation. And I've got an overabundance of raw material. So I've got hammered herd, and I'm like, how do you want it, homie? Right? I'll give it to you. Let's just somehow make this thing happen. It saves him cost. They're on a bootstrap. And they may be able to, in the next few weeks, maybe a couple of months, nothing solidified between us, but I'm just gifting it to them. So hopefully, it works out. Look, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have the extra material. And it helps out somebody in our industry that could give us an outlet.
Well, and you can't forget the storage cost of some of this product, right? Everybody says, great, well, I'm going to go after fiber, but okay, well, have you considered the other products and where they're going? Well, no. Well, what about the dust? I mean, that alone, it can be a real issue, and it's a product that you got to find somewhere to take it. And so I think that if you're after one product and that's where your profit margin is, and you get rid of it, being able to now, because then ultimately it will create a revenue stream for you and a steady offtake agreement potentially on.
Right. Offtake, the magic word, right? I heard a lot about those in 2018. Never saw one, but I heard about them. It was like chasing Bigfoot. And now in 2021, going into 2022, believe it or not, I don't want to say offtakes, but forward contracts are coming as a matter of fact, I'm entertaining a couple. And so it's showing up, which grows, which has our industry experience more legitimacy. And when we do grow a dual crop, let's say that my futures contract is on aged fiber, so herd. Well, I'm just gonna give that crop a haircut, and I'm gonna take that. Maybe I use it for medicine, or maybe there's good seeds in there. I don't know. I'm just making up a scenario here, but so I fulfilled my forward contract, and I get everything else. So then everything from there is gravy, and if we can all take this on, it really does. It really helps you, or helps your business, and helps the industry, because now it's chicken or the egg. We've heard it a million times. It would be great to have industry, but we don't have raw material. We don't have raw material because there's no industry. So we're just producing. I hope we're right. We are producing enough raw material. It was one of those things. If you build it, they will come, and I think it's worked out pretty good so far.
That's those scary words, and it's 50-50. People are like, that's not how it works. I'm like, yes, that is how it's going to work. Right. I'm going to push it into working that way. And I know other people are too. So that's awesome. Hey,
we have more pride than sense. So here we go. We're going to just do it.
I'll just ride your skirt tails right along with you. I'm in there too. So you said something earlier when we were talking about pounds of seeds that you're using compared to number of seeds, right? And we talked, then later we're talking a little bit about how production changes and volume, and not just, the size of the seed, that it just changes how many pounds per, or how many seeds per pound. Do you see the industry, or I guess a call out to the industry to get away from using pounds per acre or pounds per meter compared to cubic meter, I guess, compared to
inches? Yeah. So
seed number of seed count.
Right. Yeah. So when we got started in this industry, I've known you in the industry for quite a while, and so when we first started, it was like if you did 10,000 plants an acre, it was like blasphemy. Like, how is that even? What are you doing? I don't even know why you're not even real. This is just stupid. And so that's the best thing I can do instead of perturbed. Anyway, so and what we did is on our first crop is my farmer, Jason Norman, great guy. He said, there isn't anything industrial that'll plant, 8,000 or 10,000 plants an acre. And I'm like, well, what's the minimum? And we went and talked to our farmers, and they were like, listen, man, we don't even know. We put, they run 400 pounds of seeds per acre when it comes to alfalfa. They are in bewilderment, and they're it's like we all became like architects trying to figure out the just drip lines and irrigation and how many seeds. So we did 1 pound an acre, and then we discovered that was kind of a pain in the butt. Within 3 weeks later, we went 2 pounds an acre. Now, mathematically,
how many seeds are in a pound, and what's your germination rate typically when you do something like that?
So that was awesome, great question. So so every strain has different size seeds, right? So, but they're in between 24,000, 25,000 seeds per pound. Now, know that we use primarily CBD type strains that we're utilizing for our fiber and our grain and everything. We do have fibrous strains, but that's more or less like some sort of R&D project versus anything else. Nonetheless, so we did about 50,000 plants an acre, and when we did this, we're talking, this is 2019. So this is like June, July 2019. We had people come to the crop. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to give names. I swore I wasn't going to give names. There was a particular company that was one of the bad actors in the industry, raised $60-something million. And we found a video online that was been taken down of our crop that they had sent to their investors. To show the results that they were producing. The reason why was because it wasn't seen before in the United States. However, you go to Canada or Netherlands, they're like, yeah, that's too little. I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so all of that to say that even at 50,000 plants an acre with roughly an 85% germination rate. So it's between 80-85% is actually reliable. That's something that we can produce nearly all the time, unless we're dry plot. So if it's a dry plot, meaning we're relying on rain to come in, those numbers are all over the place. But if we have irrigation, whether it be flood, subsurface, or like a linear pivot or a pivot, the germination rate is pretty high. The reason why is because Anything above ground will emulate Mother Nature. So especially if you have a sprinkler system, which is what we do, we sprinkler to germinate and then we water through whatever infrastructure is there, or an overhead. It emulates Mother Nature. So it'll pat the seed down a little bit, compact the surface of the soil, and then Mother Nature being rainstorms. It emulates, and they love it. All of the plants love it. So it's between 80-85%. Now, mind you, we don't get that all the time, but we're pretty happy with about a 65% germination rate. Now, you have to understand that when you put 10 pounds out there, and my farmer just got a hold of me and he says, listen, in 2022 season, we're going to 15 pounds an acre. So he says that's what we're doing. So that's what we're doing. But 10 pounds an acre, that's a lot of seeds, right? So we're looking at 250,000 seeds an acre. So when you have 65% germination rate, trust me, you can barely tell the difference. Thank goodness my farmer knows. I wouldn't know. I'm just like, it's pretty and it smells good. So there's a couple things here. What we discovered is that hemp loves warm hugs. So in a windstorm, it leans on each other. When it gets cold, it has its own environment. So those of us or those of you that are from the Midwest or back east or northern parts of the United States, if you don't want frost on your windshield in the morning, you just park underneath a tree. Really, that's just what you do. So it does the same thing. Also, when you plant so tightly together or such a high volume, they protect each other by producing their canopies that mitigate the weeds for you. So limited in anything that you need inside of your soil for mitigating your pests, your weeds. In parts of Texas, they have Monsanto resistant pigweed. It is resistant to everything except for fire. And so, after week 5, hemp will, after about week 5, maybe week 6, depending upon what time of year you grow, hemp will put about 12 inches on in height in a week. And so therefore it begins to grow above the pigweed in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, and it starts to choke out the sunlight. So therefore they die. We don't get paid to put sunlight on soil. You put sunlight on soil and you're going to grow something else that you weren't planning on growing, or it's going to require a lot of hand labor in the field. So because we grow so thick, we've eliminated hand labor on most of our fields. Some of our fields, it still makes sense to run some hand labor. The last thing that I'll say about it is that you can run it with conventional equipment. It doesn't require some hemp invention. And I know I have some good friends who are inside of hemp agricultural equipment. So plug your ears. I don't mean to say anything, but when you do grow it this way, you mitigate a lot of the need for hemp specific equipment. So, and big agricultural machines, they can buck the material for you. It will, you can harvest. We use a lot of the. Our combine is so fantastic. Her name's Bertha. She was born in 1976, and she does everything we need her to do. So she pulls everything out of the field. She separates the seeds from the stems. She does everything we need. It was like a $10,000 investment with the equipment that we have on the front, and we're able to do that. Now that's duplicatable. So any farmer that we engage in, that we contract, most of the time, not all the time, they have the equipment already available that's needed to actually harvest this. Now, we can always argue, and this is probably the second part of the hate that we'll receive inside of the comments, but there is equipment that does a better job than a combine. 100% agree, and possibly more efficient. But that's not cost. That's not my part of the story. My part of the story is, how do we scale? How do we mitigate? How do we reduce cost, mitigate risk, and actually have a viable industry? Now, as we grow, as we can take loans on our crops, as we can get flipping insurance, then to me, it seems worthwhile to buy specialty equipment specifically for hemp at that time. Until then, we got to get there.
But a lot of the strategy that I hear is not about recreating the wheel or going after empty acreage. It's who has this existing equipment, who has a drill, and I was going to ask you, are you tilling or are you drilling when you're, planting seeds? Are you?
So it just depends.
Okay.
Yeah. So it just depends, right? So if we're if there's a cover crop, we're drilling, right? This just makes sense. If it's a no-till, which is an awesome fad, but let me not say fad. That's terrible. It's an awesome movement. Is no-till. We're reducing greenhouse gases. It's so great for the environment. Perfect. It's amazing for the soil. We're not having to blast it with all the things the devil could think of, just to get rid of the weeds that seem to be non-killable. And so that requires a drill. And then for those that do till, which, hey, we go with that method. That's fine. Planters work perfect, right? So we work with the farmer, we work with the land. And what we've actually found is that we've been able to entice farmers to begin the conversation of organic farming with hemp. Now, the reason why is because I'm going to piss more people off. The way that we farm here in the United States, I call welfare farming, and that's a trigger word, is welfare farming, right? So the bankers decide what you grow, how much you grow, when you grow it, and what
the cost is going to be.
Exactly. And then there's subsidies, right? So if you have a bad crop, which is typically, well, let me say this. I have farmers that are like, listen, we can do everything right. We can have a great crop and still lose money. So if it wasn't for the subsidies, they wouldn't be able to do it.
And there's a lot of people that won't switch because they have subsidy. Why would I switch? I'm guaranteed my money. I'm guaranteed the bare minimum. Why would I go out and work my butt off so that I could maybe make a little bit more?
Right. And that comes out of this side of the mouth. And then this side of the mouth is you're buying drinks because I'm broke as a joke.
Yeah.
So, and it's real, right? So, if that was the only way I knew how to take care of my family, I would be questionable as well. So the way that we do it is we're like, listen, I'm not saying run your whole farm this way.
And they're not all this way.
They're not. No, they're not.
I'm not blanketing everyone, because there are a lot out there that are doing great and have this different mindset. But I see where, especially in the US, we're stuck in this trap. And it's not just farming. It's all jobs, right?
Agreed. Yeah. And so, how many people do we know that complain about their jobs and then they've been there for 10 years and the same complaint's been there for the last 9.5, right? Yeah. So it's the same thing. And my goal is not necessarily, look, if I have to sell them into it, it's probably not going to go well. Right. I'm looking for those that see the opportunity from an entrepreneurial perspective, actually being an entrepreneur in farming. I know that seems like an oxymoron, but we have gotten so far away from that with our subsidies and institutions. It's very difficult. So it hasn't been beneficial or profitable for these farmers to grow organic or make the switch to organic. They've been thinking about it, but it's hard to gain money that way. And there's so many years that have to go by before it can be registered as organic. And so they're like, well, do I just let it go feral for 5 years? You get the whole math problem.
Yeah.
So, but we can begin that conversation with hemp. Why? Because it's phytoremediation. Now, will they still get their hemp certificates faster? No, but we're jump starting the process. So the fields that they're willing to take, maybe it's just a pivot. Maybe it's, 120 acre pivot. That's it. That's all we need. Right. And then we start the conversation. They're learning organic farming. Yeah. At the same time, we're growing a non-subsidized beneficial crop. So the plant's amazing. I know we don't have to go into this too far. I'm sure everybody knows, but if you really think of it from a phytoremediation standpoint, all the devils they put into that soil, we're going to suck out. Now, it's not going to come out in the first crop, and it may not be out in 5 crops, but it's coming out.
Yeah.
And so, we're doing a great service for the farmer. And because of the opportunities of the entrepreneurial inside of our farming is a really good enticer. I don't recommend anybody go into this thing going, I'm going to shoot 1,000 acres into the ground. I just think it's foolish. It just really is. And get your feet wet with enough acreage to make your tummy turn. And the odds are in your favor to go very well.
Yes, I agree with you. So I have so many more questions and could keep talking to you, and we're almost out of time. We only have about 10 more minutes. But I want to ask you real quick, biggest opportunities that you see for domestic versus global, right? Mm-hmm. Or for both, where, and also trying to consider, where on a global scale do you see who's leading the charge? What are they getting into? Is it plastics versus textiles? And can you kind of speak on the scale?
Whew, there's a lot there. We've got
Yeah,
what, 11 minutes. All right. So, okay. So internationally, what's hot right now is medicine. So in the United States, if it wasn't for the D8, D10 craze, or even D9 for that matter, there would be a massive surplus, and I think we'd continue to see a crash inside of our medicine market. So as much as I will have an opinion about D8, D10, thank you. And most of the world is not there. They're back where we were when we were convincing the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Senate that we wouldn't smoke this stuff, that we were going to be consuming it like this. That's where they are. So medicine is at a premium. And so your margins are a little better. So because we're producing at high volumes and inexpensive, I mean, I produce, we produce let me say this differently. We sell our cannabinoids, our isolates, somewhere between $295 and $305, and we were able to go lower than that here in the United States. Well, if you just take that down the line a little bit and turn that into a retail product, we're making 2, 3, 4, 6,000% markup in foreign markets. So that's UK, EU, and Australia. That most of that. UK, EU, they're more box stores or like boutique stores. Australia's still on the pharmacy market, so CBD is still kind of sold like kind of through a dispensary here in the US. But Southeast Asia, with topicals, not ingestibles, topicals, a good investment in topicals, and you're going to run. I mean, it will spread like wildfire. We screwed up, and we've done topicals in Southeast Asia, and the math is inventory without money equals bankruptcy, and money without inventory equals bankruptcy. We are like right in the middle. And what's a good problem to have? I mean, it's fantastic, right? We just didn't think that it was going to be that popular. Yeah. So foreign markets. In the US, look, I don't know if it was a COVID lockdowns. I don't know what it was, but it just seems that in order for us to move medicine, it has to have a stimulant in it. And in our industry, that tends to get you high, right? So it has to have a disassociate or a psychoactive result in this. So I have my own opinions of this, and I don't want to get into that because it still can be considered medicine. But because of the speed in which we went to market, let's say that the bad actors are still in the industry and it's not being done appropriately. There's no oversight, and there's only a couple of labs in the United States that actually test it. I mean, leaving anything behind, let's say pesticides. I mean, you're doing more harm than good. The chemicals that they use to crash this stuff is insane. Most of it requires licenses to produce, to purchase, I should say.
Well, and again, it's not necessarily the Delta 8 that's the concern as much as how it's made or the residuals.
That's exactly it.
And then what else is it binding to, or how is it making the effects of your other chemicals, because it's not Delta 9.
Agreed.
Right?
And then my other issue with it, we'll just say, because I am a huge supporter of medicine, okay, 100% from a medicinal purpose, 100%. You want me as a cheerleader, okay? What I don't like about it is that we, as soon as it seemed to be that we kind of got settled. Well, we're not even settled. As soon as states got settled into, okay, it's gray, let's see how it goes. Like Florida or Texas. It was like, okay, fine. Let's emulate everything that a child would want to consume, right? So let's do Skittles. Let's do gummies. You've seen it. Cookies, everything, right? And so I understand. It's a different vehicle than an adult. Adult likes sugar too. I get that. And we're not considering the children. So in my opinion, it's got to be regulated like a behind-the-counter situation. So just like you buy alcohol or cigarettes, same exact way, and you don't make it appealing to children. It's my personal opinion. Probably fourth time we're going to get hate on this thing, but just stop appealing to children. Really, I mean, gummies. We actually do produce a retail CBD product. It does have different colors, but they're not fun shapes. Right. So they're typically oblong or they are square, cube. So different colors just emulate flavor. Right. Or just give one is raspberry, one strawberry. You get what I'm saying. And we really do. And it's in a dark bottle. It's not see-through. So you'd actually have to open the bottle, dump it out in your hand to get your favorite flavor. So I'm not saying that that we're superior in any way. It just follows our principles. And it's the fastest way to stop the success of D8 is to get in the hands of children and cause hospitalizations. I think the FDA just came out with their cautions. I think you posted it actually on LinkedIn on their cautions on it. And I think the fastest way to ruin a good thing is to do something like that. The second thing is that because there is no standard to how to produce D8, D10, and then this new invention, THCO, like get out of town. It's an invention. It's synthesized. So talk about orbiting the planet. So my experience is like Adderall and like methamphetamine while observing a heroin addict. It's insane. I've never done it, but I've seen people that do it. And I'm like, why? Man, maybe we should talk. Maybe you got something going on that we need to talk about. And I'd rather talk to you than see you orbit the planet. So the point is that we run with this. Oh, it's the newest, latest, greatest cannabinoid, and we run with it. And the industry runs with it.
I believe a lot of it was accelerated by the drop in the CBD market. Everybody has this massive amount of product. What do we do with it? And now we can sell something and make up for the millions of dollars that we invested in the extraction facility that never came to, or whatever it was that was lost. Right? You can take this product and now turn it in, especially in the medical space, right? So there's a lot there that. Yeah.
And so to answer the question without going on that tangent, I do apologize, is I do think with responsibility, that is a future. Now look, it's see a need, fill a need, right? So if D8 and D10 are outlawed, or this new THCO or THCV is Invicta is outlawed, there's others that will be synthesized.
Yeah.
So, and I would assert the farther down we go down that chain, the more we bastardize the compounds, the more dangerous they're going to be to human consumption and or alien, right? It's just because they're synthesized, the body, I mean, our receptors, this isn't something they're accustomed to, right? So now we're introducing something new or synthetic to the body. And this is something we said we weren't going to do as an industry, right? So we were doing this to combat heroin addiction and other opioid addiction, right? And yet it seems like the stimulants are powerful enough or we could get to a point where they're powerful enough to be in the same category and synthesized, not natural.
Well, and I think that's what happens when we're outlawing flower or the herb, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand it. I get it. I get isolating it because then you can patent it, right? You can't patent on the flower. So I understand the pharmaceuticals, but understanding that by requiring, and Utah is this way, you cannot put flame to flower and you cannot sell flower certain ways. It's very restricted, so forth, especially CBD flower, unless I think it's in a dispensary. And who's going to walk to a dispensary to buy CBD flower at $80 an eighth or however much it is, right? A quarter.
Right.
So I guess my concern now is we turn it almost to a narcotic.
Right.
Now my kids have access more readily to dab because dab is readily available and it's more legal or more acceptable because it's this medical. And so, and equally as much, how do we get the medicine to people who are not avid users when a product like that is so much stronger? And so, there's all these pieces to it that
Agreed. So, and with responsibility and integrity inside of our industry, that's our sustainability. Maybe not our future, but our sustainability. So, and we can't forget about CBD. We can't forget about CBC, CBN, you name it. We can't forget about those cannabinoids, right? Because they really do good things for people. And D8, in my opinion, or the new fads of THC, I gave us access to still produce other cannabinoids or medicine at a less expensive rate. Let's face it, up until recently, well, maybe it still is. It's a white collar medicine, right? So it just is. And so our goal, our company's goal, maybe the fifth time we get hate, is to make cannabinoids as inexpensive as vitamin C. We're not there yet. I don't know how. I would assert by 2025, we probably should have it nailed, which means it's accessible to everybody. Yeah. And the fear that I have is dabbling in these other cannabinoids that are going to cause more problems for us giving medicine to those that are in need. A cancer patient that needs 4 grams a day. Right now, it's not sustainable. Just isn't. So, and the fads could interrupt our progress into making 4 grams a day, $10 a day or $4 a day or something like that, to help with whatever they're dealing with.
Yeah, I agree. Well, okay. So to sum it up real quick, we have only 2 more minutes, but tell us where you're headed and how do people get in touch with you if they want to get involved or if they want to collaborate?
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of a big deal on LinkedIn. That's kind of a lie, but LinkedIn, I respond on LinkedIn. I think that's how you and I communicate. On LinkedIn. Any questions, info@botanicwellnessusa.com. If you go to our website, we're going through a rebrand. So any constructive criticism, not hate, would be awesome. And just love to hear from people. We have a great team. Jeremy Magoon, he heads our customer service, phenomenal guy. You call for cannabinoids, but I promise you're going to be talking about your kids within 5 minutes. He's just a great guy. Or he's sharing it without his son. He's got a little redheaded boy who's just a ball of energy and fire. Just amazing. And yeah, so we're here to help. Look, we're not one of those companies that's asking for a check before I help you. We've been known to fly across the country and visit farms that are in trouble just because we want our industry to survive. Now, that isn't always the case. We can't always do that, but we've been known to do it. So we're here to help. We have some good SOPs. We're able to share tidbits of those SOPs to help you along. We're willing to do what it takes to get our industry going. We can't do it by ourselves. Mandy can't do it by herself. Right. It takes a community. It really does. And we are in our infant stages. We just started. We're discovering how to walk. An infant falls over 400,000 times before they discover how to walk. We're about halfway through that. And so it takes a community to get us there.
JC said, yes, Texas, please. I think you missed earlier that he's in Texas actually right now, and we were giving some shout outs. So I'll definitely get you connected, JC. Awesome opportunity down there. I've heard lots of good things. I'm interested too, where the biofuels is going to go down there.
Right. Yeah. I've heard a lot of rumblings. I'm still looking for them. I've heard a lot of rumblings.
Exactly. So, well, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate you. I will definitely reconnect here pretty soon so that I can help. I'd love to help share the message and get, like you said, a little bit of information out that's more easily accessible to farmers, and help share that message. So I wouldn't mind collaborating with you there and get you out there. So anyways, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everybody else. We'll be back next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. And then next week, we have an event in Salt Lake. For those of you that are listening in Salt Lake, it's about sustainable building and how hemp plays a role in that. So I'm really excited to actually be hosting something live, face-to-face. Do some takes and
brave. Look at you.
Yes. Yeah, I'm getting out there,
That's awesome.
Okay, thanks very much, you guys. I'll talk to you tomorrow.